Good afternoon again. My name is Kirsten Ahlen with Gravitate. We'll go ahead and get started now. This is being recorded and we will send out a link after the webinar. So if you needed to download it, if you missed something, don't worry, that will be available to you. My apologies in advance if you suddenly see a dog picture fly up. It's my little screensaver. It makes things happy. As far as our goals, I wanted to start off before I get into goals with doing a little bit of housekeeping. Inside of the GoToWebinar, you will have some chat as well as some question areas. So if a question does pop up, please feel free to go ahead and type in your question. I will be checking on it as we go through, but I will probably also be saving some of those to the end of the webinar just to keep things moving and not get lost. In the meantime, I wanted to cover some of our goals that we have for this particular webinar. We really wanted to make sure that we're providing an understanding of the nuts and bolts of some of these scheduled invoicing and payment features inside of netFORUM. I do want to make a preface here and say that I really expect the vast majority of time that you're using scheduling, that you're really capturing payment information like ACH or a credit card to automatically collect payment based on the schedule. So even when we're talking about scheduled invoicing, the system can automatically charge a designated credit card or ACH account at the time of invoicing. And the hope there is that it really actually reduces the collection activity because we sometimes do see additional collection activity when you have installments. There's more opportunities where you have to do a collection, and so that can increase it. So of course we want to move to automated payments as much as possible. With that caveat, I'll add another caveat. For very large transactions or those that you couple the collection with a contact like in major gift stewardship, you might not have automatic payments in those cases, and that's by choice. In those situations, you may instead want an automatic assignment to a staff person, or at the very least, a query of installments due that month that you would give staff to follow up with the individual orders that need to be paid and have those gifts go against them. Both of these options, as far as whether or not you want an automatic assignment or just a listing of the scheduled payments that are due, can be done through Baseline. They both basically require a query. If you want the automatic assignments on top of that to staff that reference a customer, I would probably recommend using some of the features that we would see in like moves management. Sorry, my little side note. And I would also say as like an example of when you might do that for the stewardship, just to use some staff as an example, you can have the system set up an assignment to Lindsay, for instance, to follow up with Dr. Watson for his next pledge gift. That can be a really great use of that. Or assign Molly to follow up with ABC Corp for its sponsorship milestone payment. So those are some of the things that you can do if you do have more of that stewardship happening to a large item. Otherwise, we're hoping for automatic payments. Another goal that we have here is to give you an awareness of some of the advantages and disadvantages of these scheduled features. And we also want you to become acquainted with some of the more common as well as some of the unique use cases. I find that the use cases really help cement my understanding of feature, and so I really hope it helps you too. Also, it's how I've learned over time to help clients leverage the Baseline as much as possible for new program needs. Every once in a while, we get locked into what something is called or where it exists inside of the solution, inside of netFORUM, rather than what it actually does and the benefits that it can give us. So sometimes seeing the scenarios kind of makes you think a little bit outside of where you might normally look. As with all things in netFORUM, this is really just giving you more options available. And of course, with additional options comes more responsibility in the sense that you really do need to look at the different options to see which overall works best for your organization. So a lot of these kind of different, what it might be called might not be where we would use it. So speaking of names, as with all things netFORUM, we have some terminology things to cover. I'm going to start off with installment orders. Actually, these are the same thing as verbal pledges that we see in the fundraising module, so sometimes you see them used interchangeably. So I just wanted to make that very clear up at the front. With an installment order or a verbal pledge, netFORUM is recognizing the revenue for the first payment amount only, and then we're scheduling the remaining revenue over time. Putting it in a slightly different way, though still in accounting speak, we're deferring revenue for a specific to a specific or a custom recognition schedule. And we'll see a little bit more on the accounting side in a moment. With installment orders, I do want to call out that we are limited to, it's really only available if we are selling an exhibit booth fee, membership, grant contributions, or fundraising products, aka the pledges that we have listed. If you have other items in an order, in addition to say a membership, if I also had a subscription product or a membership or a merchandise product or an event registration, one thing you need to keep in mind with these installment orders is that the revenue and also the charges for all those other things that are on the order will also be split among all the different installments that you have. So if you're really building up that order, that's really great. Just understand that that $13 mug might actually, the revenue, you wouldn't see it until you actually do the installments for it. So it could be $2 at a time, and that's fine. The other caveat that I needed to add for membership is simply that the membership package that you use, you do need to check a flag that's called Allow Installments for that membership. This is, I wouldn't say relatively new, but it is a changing feature over time. So depending on when you went live, you may not have had this checkbox to allow installments on your membership. Initially, it was available to all of them, but then over time, what we found was that, or what has been found from R&D is looking at it and saying that some packages may want to have installments, whereas other packages you may not want to have installments. Where this can really come into play is you might have a membership that's always $120, but if somebody wants to buy it on installment and have that option, you might have an additional fee on that particular package. So you might charge maybe $125 or $130 for that membership that would otherwise be $120 if they did it at the upfront charge. So that is some logic that's changed over time, so just be aware of that for installment orders. The next one we have would be our installment payments, which in fundraising would be called our signed or pending signed pledges. In these ones, we're recognizing all the revenue up front, and then we're paying down AR and receiving cash over an established schedule. A common use case is, of course, coming from fundraising. I'll borrow that. So when somebody pledges $1,000, we book that full pledge amount upon the signed pledge. Then we'll establish a contribution or a gift schedule to meet that pledge. So we'll ask them to pay $200 every month until they meet that $1,000 original pledge amount. Unlike installment orders, installment payments are available on any invoice. So we can really assign it to almost anything that we're really selling inside of netFORUM. Because it's a general area, I was trying to think of things where I can defer and kind of play with scheduling payments. We have some other fun opportunities as well, and that's looking at recurring gifts. So recurring gifts are similar to our installment orders in the sense that we're invoicing and charging an account on a schedule. A key difference, though, is that with recurring gifts, we don't have a max amount, and the schedule doesn't have an end date. So we're really just asking for $200 every single month until someone tells us to stop, or you take an action to stop it. With our recurring gifts, they are technically set up in the fundraising module, but again, this is a feature that can be used for other functions. For instance, some organizations may have access fees to online resources like online education. I've also worked with organizations who charge rent in their building, and recurring gifts is actually a way where I'm just going to charge you that monthly fee every single month as it goes, and there's no end date. So it's just, again, matching that function to the need that you have. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the features can multiple different use cases and scenarios. The cases that I just mentioned with that online access as well as the rent, those can actually be accomplished with another tool too that we've talked about in the past, and that's the auto-pay renewal membership. So already we found one use case, two different features that we have. Gravitate actually gave a separate presentation on auto-pay renewal a couple months ago, so we won't be covering too much of that today, but I did want to call it out as an option with regard to the use cases. In the case of using a monthly access fee as the example, that could be a monthly membership that you have that you're setting up auto-pay. So you can do recurring gifts that keeps on going, or you could set it up as a monthly membership. If you did it as an auto-pay renewal membership, you just need to remember to run the renewal process every single month, as opposed to, say, the recurring gift task that we'll see a little bit later. When I'm thinking of which solution works best, some of the things that I really want to look at are what other activities you have in those areas. If you have a very, very active fundraising group, it might not be the best idea to muddy the waters with adding in a recurring gift to an online education item inside of your fundraising module. That might not go over well with that team, and it may clutter up what you have on the website as far as seeing my gifts and that kind of thing. So you need to be conscious of that. On the flip side, some organizations, you have a lot more in the membership and you're displaying membership everywhere, so you might not want to muddy the waters there. So it's really kind of looking at which one is the best place for you and finding some ways to segment that out. The other thing I would look at would be, of that item, picking on that online resource, do you have any integrations that you're expecting? And if so, especially when it comes to integrations around dates, what are your requirements with regard to dates? A membership would have a start and end date that we could look at for that monthly installment, whereas a recurring gift just has, this is my gift date, so I paid it this month, I get access this month, would kind of be the logic that you're looking at there. So again, just kind of wanting to look at the full requirement set before coming in on that solution. After this particular webinar, we are going to send out an email to everyone, and that email will include that link over to our auto-pay renewal membership. So you'll have that if you wanted to download it a little bit later. It is on our website. I didn't want to leave it out, so I did include also on our other fun stuff listing, exhibitor milestones. I'm not going to be going into this too terribly much. It's been around since the beginning pretty much, and it's available on an exhibit show that you have inside of netFORUM. What we see with our exhibiting milestones are that you can set up a milestone with a date and a percentage of their overall booth fees. So for instance, when I initially come in and I'm buying all of my booth space, I can select my first milestone. Maybe that's a 50% deposit. So it takes whatever booth fees that I have, determines the 50%, and that's what I pay there. It is only creating an invoice and thus payment for that initial 50%. It's not creating any open AR for me. So it's kind of like installment orders in that regard. And then you can set up another schedule milestone. So maybe 30 days out from the show date, you require the other 50% of that item. So you can set up those two different milestones. As I mentioned, that's a feature that has been inside of netFORUM for quite some time. I have been seeing more customers moving a little bit more toward the installment payments or the installment order feature, just because it has a little bit more flexibility for you and has that ability to manage the overall order and kind of run things en masse. But I didn't want to leave it off. I thought that would be too sad. So without further ado, let's go have a look-see at some accounting information. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to keep on kind of flipping back and forth between installment orders and payments and hopefully keeping them straight along the way. So with installment order and with the verbal pledge, I have this case where $20 order pledge and it's paid in 4 monthly installments. So in this case, we'll see that my January installment hits and I see that I've got AR and I have that revenue, but it's only for the $50. And so the next month, when I go ahead and run it for February, I'm going to see another $50 to cash and $50 to revenue. The point here is I'm not carrying any open AR for that whole $200 for the pledge or order in this particular case. I am only creating my revenue and cash as I go. So it's kind of a cash check basis. A thing to keep in mind for this one is that if your order includes a sale item that is a deferred product, netFORUM will not follow the product price's deferral schedule. It's following whatever recognition schedule you have set up on that order. So again, that's where these 4 monthly installments, even if this was for, say, a membership of $200 that would have recognized over 12 months, because I'm using installment orders, my recognition schedule is actually these first 4 months. So you will see that bump happening in the first 4 months of membership as opposed to the entire cycle. Another example that we see this on, picking on the exhibits that I talked about earlier, exhibit fees can be set up. Traditionally, we see organizations who might defer revenue until the event date. Instead, if we're using installment orders, again, we would only be, it's kind of similar to the milestone process, we would only see the invoiced amount for that first item, and then we're going to have the invoice and cash for the second half later. No open AR for the full amount. Not really saying good or bad on either of the options. It, again, really comes down to your organization's revenue forecasting and recognition needs. So we have that kind of accounting side, and we see that. So how do we do these installment order things? And I really just wanted to keep it nice and simple. And so really, it's if I'm selling an installment order and I have one of those 4 products, one area that I can go to very easily is centralized order entry. I add one of the qualifying products to the order. And then for pledges, as far as 2015 and beyond, you can go to the fundraising module, and now there's a new add a donation wizard, and that walks it through. Wanted to give you a little bit of the pictures here. So this is coming from our centralized order entry. And again, I've added one of the qualifying products to my my order, and once that's there, you'll see in my orange box the type. Instead of selecting Performa, prepaid, or terms invoice, I'm selecting installment instead. And so when I select installment, the page posts back and it asks me for my payment information and a whole bunch of other stuff. What's really important here is that we're looking at our green box for the amount. This is how much we want to pay for that particular, for the next installment, or for what we would divide into equal installments. In the blue box, that's where we're designating the number of installments that we have in our frequency. Your frequency can be monthly, quarterly, semi-annually. The very bottom, I mentioned earlier, we really want to see recurring payments or being able to have an auto charge payment. So at the very bottom, you have auto pay installments. So the information that we're entering at the right regarding our Visa account here, we're going to capture that, or in the case of our payment processor, capture the token to that, and that's what we're going to be charging every single month. So we have that information. A little note here that yes, these all look like required fields basically that I have in my boxes here, but you can actually zero out the payment amount in the first, if the first payment isn't today. Sort of a little trick there. In that case, if you wanted to say that the first payment wasn't actually going to happen until March 1st as an example, you can set the payment amount to 0, and then in that first invoice date, you would enter 3/1/2018 to defer when you wanted to run that first payment. As of 2015, as soon as you tab out of the payment amount equals 0, this section should refresh for you, and at the very bottom, you'll see a little message that says something along the lines of that 1/4, or in this case, it's 1/4, that your installment amount of the total due will be billed on the date that you're specifying in that first invoice date. So it's kind of reiterating, I'm not charging you today, I will charge you a little bit later. When you select monthly, Baseline creates a schedule of a schedule for when it's actually going to run the invoicing for this item. these are all going to be serial consecutive monthly invoices. It's not going to try to automatically schedule these out as 4 monthly installments over a year or over 2 years or anything like that. It really is taking the first invoice date that you have, and then the next installment is going to be 1 month after that. The third installment is going to be another month after that, and the fourth one 1 month after that. So that's really the schedule that you're looking at. If you want to personalize it, you do have a personalize button right there in the blue box that you can go ahead and click. And that actually takes you to a personalization schedule pop-up. So here you have the ability, if a customer has a very specific need on the date that they want to be invoiced, the amount that they want to be charged, you can go and customize that very down to a great detail. You see here that you have the number of installments reiterated, so you can change that too if you needed to very quickly. If I do change the number of installments here from say 4 and I upped it to 6, keep in mind that as soon as I tab out of that, it is going to regenerate with this expected schedule. So if you've done any kind of custom amounts, just know that that's all going to go back to the standard of take the full amount due, divide it by number of installments, and that's the amount. So if you did have custom items, you kind of get to redo that if you change the number of installments due. One final note on the personalized schedule, but also installment orders. If you have a renewable sale item, like a membership, the specific schedule, if you personalize the schedule, it does not necessarily carry to next year. netFORUM goes back and it sets to your default schedule that you had. So on next year, and looking at the schedule that we have in front of us, next year on my renewal, it's going to say 2/7/2019, 3/7/2019, 4/7/2019, etc. So it is going to advance the year for you. But if I had set up some custom schedule, like I wanted the first billing to be in February, but the second billing not until April 1st, that kind of aspect of it would get lost in that renewal currently. But for installment orders, it is advancing that schedule for you, so it would look like it's going for next year. I also wanted to make one final note about the scheduled items when you're talking about scheduling an installment order and membership. Please be sure to keep your member type business rules in mind. Those are usually set up at the very beginning of your project when you went live with netFORUM, so sometimes we forget them over time, but they are set up in the membership module. Many clients give benefits upon 100% payment. If you are using the installment order process, that can be moved down to 100% on that initial invoice that gets created. So on that initial installment, we'll give them full benefits of membership as your example. So you want to keep that in mind. You can also sell your pledges from centralized order entry and kind of follow the same schedule. However, as I mentioned, in 2015, netFORUM also has a new wizard to sell gifts and pledges. And that's available from your fundraising module. You have an add gift, or you can go to a constituent, you click on add donation, and that brings up this wizard. Just so we can have a look-see, here is what our add a donation page looks like now. So we have our constituent name at the very top, and then we have these different options available to go ahead and select. So in order to create the installment order that we were just talking about, that is the verbal pledge, it's simply a matter of checking this box that says verbal. The next step, it's going to walk you through the basic gift information, your billing information, and then the final step looks exactly like the centralized order entry version, with one exception. It already has the invoice type set to installment, so you can't change it. You really just need to put in your payment information and then the frequency for paying down this verbal pledge. So now when we have our verbal pledges, let me go, I see a question, so I just want to double check. No, I didn't. I'm checking on one of the questions. It was, does installment payment cause PCI compliance issues? We store the credit card for each future installment. So you're doing saved payment information the same way that you have saved payment information for almost all of your transactions that you have. So if you are using vaulting, you're storing that vaulted item as it is, keeping in mind that you're likely saving the credit card, not credit card information, but that payment information, if you will, because that's also the only way that you would be able to do like a return refund back to somebody. So just like all of the other saved payments, ideally you're saving that vaulted information. You're not actually saving 41111, etc. as the credit card number. So it's following the same processes that you have for other saved payment information inside of netFORUM. So with our saved installment orders, that was great. Now I want to make sure that we're kind of flipping sides and we're going to the installment payment side, otherwise known as signed pledges. So kind of same process I want to walk through. We have a $200 order or pledge, and it's paid in 4 monthly installments. Big difference here is that we're seeing that revenue, we're hitting $200 up front at the time that we create the order or that we sign that particular pledge. Then our schedule for paying it down is what's decreasing our AR, and our cash flow, again, is still dictated based off of that schedule. So cash income, that's still the same. The big difference is carrying that open AR that we're pushing down and then seeing revenue up front. I did only mention revenue here. Of course, if on sale the item is deferred, when you sell it, it would be going to deferred revenue, and then revenue recognition would recognize it just as if it had been fully paid up front and that kind of thing. I have one little error on this page because I copied it. I will fully confess up to that one. How do we do installment payments? You buy something through centralized order entry. A qualifying product is any product inside of netFORUM. So anything that we can invoice, that's where my number 2 is wrong, we have the ability to do. For the actual pledges, though, we have the add a donation wizard again. So that's still an option that you have for that side. It should look fairly familiar. There's just a couple changes when we're talking about installment payments. The big one is we sell it through centralized order entry. I put it whatever I want in my cart. On the type of invoice, instead of selecting a installment option, we're selecting installment payment. So that's available in our dropdown. Again, we still have our payment method, the amount that we want to use, our number of installments and frequency, and we have the ability to personalize our schedule. The ever important, almost always hidden little checkbox at the bottom, make sure to check to auto pay the installment. So if we put somebody in for their $50, we want to make sure that next month we have the ability to run a process. It automatically charges the card. We don't have to follow up and send them an invoice and all that kind of stuff. From the pledge perspective, it's the same idea of going into the fundraising module. We can click on add gift or go to the constituents profile and click add donation. Difference is we're selecting signed instead in this case. So it's very clear. Use when you expect full payment, want to recognize all the revenue right now, and that's kind of clear as far as that option goes. The rest of the steps are the same. So again, it's asking us for our gift information, and then it takes us to ask for our payment information as the final step. And again, the invoice type is already selected in this particular wizard for us. One of the key differences that we have with installment payments, it's available for any product that we want, but that also means that we can use it on any invoice. That means you can also use it on an existing invoice. Installment orders is only available on the initial sale. So payments is a little bit special that way. One way that we can add installment payments is to an existing invoice. We simply navigate over to that invoice and we click on the installment payment button. And that's how we can kind of initially install and set up these payments. It really just prompts us for the frequency and the number of installments that we want. Very simple box to go. Once you provide that information, netFORUM is going to update this page, and you'll notice then you'll have an order code. That order code is clickable, and it can take you over to your order profile. That's pretty simple. If a customer calls in, you know, that's a really big amount, things are really tight, or I need to hit certain thresholds. I can't put all of that amount on my credit card. Can you do something so that I'm paying it down in monthly installments against my credit card? Installment payments on the existing invoice is a great example for that. Once you have set up the actual schedule, so installment payments is really just telling netFORUM, here's the schedule that I want to use. You can click on that order and that takes you over to the order profile. This order profile is used for installment payments, installment orders, as well as what we'll see a little bit later, recurring gifts. Pledges also come back and reference this form. So it looks pretty much the same. There's a couple things that I want to call out. One is on the left-hand side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth item down, you have a type. In this case, we're looking at a payment installment. Depending on the type, you have a couple different options of those buttons in the middle, like adjust installment, void installment, and that sort of thing. So we'll talk through some of those differences that you have available. The other thing that you can do from this order profile, though, is that you have that edit button on the right-hand side. When you click on that edit button, that opens up your edit order, and this is where you'd have the ability to go in and add or change the payment for this order. So in the case of the installment payment that we just came from, it didn't ask me for any credit card information in that step. I had to click on the order button, the order link, to come here and then hit edit, and that's where I can add the credit card in order to have it get charged every single month as I want to pay it down, or every quarter. I just like doing payment method on monthly just to keep it consistent. So it is a couple different steps if you're adding installment payments to an existing invoice. So I just want to make that clear. But again, that's also where you would come, the edit button, if I needed to change the credit card at all or change the ACH information. Somebody wants to charge a different credit card. As far as some of our other options on this page, I'm going to focus on this page but talk about some of the things that are available depending on the type of order that we're on. Again, the installment type would say payment or order as some of the options that you have. We come down, one of the first buttons, the first top ones that we have is the adjust installment, and that's available on both order types. When you click on that one, it's really just popping up the schedule that you have available. So you'd have the ability to manually go in and set different dates, different amounts for your actual schedule. If they are currently on a 3 monthly installments and want to move to 5, you have the option of changing the number of installments and again setting that schedule. So that is available. What I wanted to reference and make sure to keep in mind, you can only adjust an installment for the installments not yet invoiced or paid. Once that's set, you can't change it without first voiding everything out. So we want to kind of avoid that, and instead it's just changing how you're going to bill them going forward. The other button that you have, we're going to skip over for a second that grayed out one for void order and look at the void installment schedule. This is a powerful one. Void installment schedule is really clearing out the entire schedule for this order. You will get prompted, as soon as you click it, you will get prompted with the actual schedule so you can check things off that you need to void. So you do have that kind of last minute, are you sure moment. It's not click the void installment and then it's all gone. So you do have that fail safe. But void installment schedule, if I'm doing that from an installment, a payment installment, it's really just taking you back to having a straight up invoice with a partial payment applied, if that. So it's kind of reverting things back. However, on an installment order, where we're creating invoices as we go, voiding the installment schedule is really only part of the process. Once you void the installment schedule, you then need to click on what you see as kind of that grayed field and void the actual order. And that's saying, I'm done with this installment order. We're kind of stopping it at this point. Void order does not void out any existing invoicing that you have done against the order up to this point. It's only voiding the remaining amounts. So if you have a membership, first I would come in and void the installment schedule, and then I'm going to void the order. And that's going to say, stop trying to invoice this person. They're not paying their installments. With membership, though, I will say that there is a couple additional considerations that you want to have established as a process. For those of you who, once you have a partially paid membership, you would just kind of void out the remaining orders and there's no additional financial transaction that you want to make. You just want to make sure that you're going to the membership and adding a termination date. Stop the benefits, assuming you stop the benefits when they stop paying you. For some organizations, however, they like to see a return transaction for the remainder portion of the membership. So if they only paid 3 of the 12 months, you want a return transaction for 4 through 12. The way that you would do this is actually not to void the installment schedule and then order. The first thing that you want to do is actually adjust the installment schedule. So instead of having an installment schedule of the remaining number of installments, you would truncate that to just having 1 installment remaining. You'd want to make sure that you're taking away any automatic payment that they have on that order. But once you're down to just having that 1 scheduled installment remaining, then you would go ahead and invoice that 1 remaining installment, and then you would cancel that invoice. That's going to create that return transaction for you so that you can see the amount of membership that was returned, if you will. That should go ahead and put the termination date onto that membership once you've canceled that last, if you will, invoice for that customer. So membership is a little bit of a special duck, especially if you needed to have the additional transactions going through. So I just wanted to call that out and make sure that you had that. Continuing on, I was doing void order. After I had void order, we're going to go to the next line. Specific to installment payments only, you have add payment. So this is a way that you can go ahead, come onto the order and say, I want to pay down one of the installments against this item. So if you are doing a stewardship or the credit card didn't go through for whatever reason, or they're just really anxious to pay it off early, you can come over to the order profile and click on the little add payment link. And that'll open up the form, very traditional add payment process to go through. The next one that we do see on the payment profile is the generate auto pay and renew returns, which is actually referencing a little bit of other functionality. Technically, you can go here and trigger the mass process that is going to go and charge all of these orders for the payment. However, the majority of scheduled tasks has been moving over into the admin module. So personally, I would just start getting in the habit of go to the admin module and the task manager to go ahead and schedule everything from there. Don't try to have some tasks that you're running in other modules. Just get in the habit of going there because it might go away soon. The other button that you will see if you are on an installment order, though, so sorry to be jumping back and forth, but it's the same form, just different items, would be a generate orders or button. With the generate orders button, it is generate installments button. It is generate the next installment for which is creating an invoice for an order. There's a couple caveats that I want to give based off of prior experience with running the generate installment on orders process. The first one being all you're really asked to do is provide a batch where you want these new invoices to go, and you're given a date, and it's called your transaction date that you want to use. What netFORUM does as soon as you hit go on that is it goes out and it looks at all of the installment orders that you have open in your system, and it looks at the schedule for all of those orders. If that order has a schedule that is before a scheduled due date that is before the date that you've provided, it says, okay, go generate an invoice for that order. The caveat is that it doesn't generate necessarily the invoice that is corresponding to that date as one might expect. It's generating the next one that's available. So it should be extremely rare, but again, I wanted to point it out because I've stumbled on it with clients in the past when they're getting started. Something happened and they did not generate the invoices for all of the installments going forward. So what happened was they had a user who went and clicked generate installments, and that generated an installment that was, say, 4 months old. Then they clicked the button again, and it generated the next installment for that customer. So at the end of the day, a user had clicked the button a couple times, and that individual had been charged a couple of times leading up to their order. So it created this situation where that customer had been charged 4 times in a single day, which was catch-up payments, if you will. They should have been paid all along or charged all along, but again, something happened and that didn't happen for this particular customer, and then they were charged all at once. So if that does happen to you, that is probably where I will go and say, go ahead and look at the order. Something happened beforehand that caused them not to get charged properly. And I have some tips at the end of this presentation to talk about how not to have that happen to you, which happens to do with a lot of system options. Making sure with my notes I covered it. And the final areas I want to see a lot of buttons on this particular form, but I also wanted to look at, I think where I look a little bit more are the tabs that are down below. And I didn't provide all of the details on that because I wanted a bigger screenshot. But the general tab is really just where you see the line items that are on this particular order. So it really kind of looks like invoice line items displayed. In addition to just saying what products are actually on this order, it also tells you the installment amount and the amount left to bill under this order. It'll also tell you the original price of the item. The Invoices to Date tab will show you what invoices you have generated for this order to up to this point. For an installment payment order, you really should just see the one invoice that you created when you sold the item. So you only should ever see one. However, when you're looking at an order that is an installment order, that's where we're going to see multiple invoices. And the multiple invoices will use that sub-invoice functionality inside of netFORUM. So you will see a -1, a -2, a -3, -4, etc. Each installment invoice will be its own invoice, but it will always refer to that parent invoice number through those dashes. The next tab that we have is a summary tab. The summary tab is helpful in that it lists off the actual schedule that you have, and it shows you when you last processed each of the scheduled installments. So that's just a good check to go back. I know that I invoiced you on this date, or I know I tried to charge your credit card, or I did charge your credit card on this date. That's where you'll see that information. The last item is your log. It includes an audit at a field level. It also includes gateway errors, which can be helpful. I see a question, so I'm going to try to see if I can go. So let me see. There was a question about some of the 2017 features. As far as consolidating it and making a little bit better view, yes, but as far as functionality, not too much. As far as XWeb API, that one I would have to get back to you and double check on. I'm not aware of any on that one, but again, I just want to double check. For auto renewal and membership, we aren't talking about that too terribly much, but that was really just, it's just setting a flag and a little bit of additional information on the membership. So it's really something that you would need to update back on the membership record, but it's not XWeb usually that's running that renewal process. It's staff that's running the renewal process inside of netFORUM that's going to go out and say, go charge the credit card. So not too much, I wouldn't expect too much of a change on that for the XWeb, but if I'm missing your question, let me know. And then the question of, does membership package have to be set up to auto renew or auto payments at all? For auto pay renewal, no, the membership package does not have to be designated anyway. Again, we only set that at the actual membership level. So that's the individual or organization's membership that they own. That's where we designate that they want to do auto pay. And I would refer to our other video that kind of goes over that in more detail. Likewise, for automatic payments, if you want to do installments or orders, it's not something that you're setting on the membership. In the case of installment payment, there's absolutely nothing. In the case of allowing installment orders, however, on a membership, that's something that you set up in the package itself. So if you go into the membership module and you're on the association profile, you click on Add Membership Package and you'll see a checkbox to allow installments. And that's the checkbox that needs to be set up before you can start selling it and allowing people to buy at the installment process. I had one more. Let me trying to scroll with a button that doesn't want to scroll. I mentioned that you can select the first installment payment date by changing the date and setting the amount to 0. Yes. And then which date was I referring to exactly? Let me go back and try to bring that up. I think I can do it on this one. It says first payment date. It says first payment if you're doing installment payments, but it's at the very bottom of the page. It says first payment. If you're on installment orders instead, it says first invoice date. With a date that's right above that auto pay installment button. Yes, not the transaction date. Leave the transaction date as is. That'll be set on your invoice. And let me see if I had one more or if that was it. If installment payments are expecting full payments and GL recognizes the revenue immediately, why is it treated as an installment as opposed to just a one-time payment? A one-time payment from netFORUM standpoint, it is a one-time payment. You're essentially, installment payments is the same thing as somebody just deciding they're going to send you in a check for $40 every month. You go in and you manually apply it. The main difference is that with an installment payment, you're actually agreeing to receive that $40 every single month ahead of time. You're setting up a schedule, and then you can automatically charge a credit card for that $40 or whatever amount every single month. So it's the same thing as applying a one-time, or not a one-time, but applying a partial payment over a series, in a series over a period of time. But let me know if I'm missing it. I'm going to reread it one more time. If an installment payment are expecting full payment, the GL recognizes revenue immediately. Yes, so it's full AR and revenue. Why is it treated as opposed to that? Yes, it's just because I want to schedule, and basically then I can do cash forecasting. So I can have an idea of when I expect that cash, when I'm expecting my AR to go down on that side or be relieved. And another one. Can you pay a different initial amount and then set up the remainder on a schedule on the same screen? Not necessarily on the same screen-ish. So you can set, if you click on this personalized schedule button that we had, you can set it so your first installment, maybe I want that to be $50, but every other installment after that, I would want it to be $20. So you can do it on that personalized schedule that you see this button here, or if it's on an existing order, you can go to the order, and that's where you're clicking on that adjust installment, and that's where you can change the schedule. And this one generated a lot of questions. Let's see. The next one I see is just, how is it different than installments? Not entirely sure how that was in reference to which one, because I'm not seeing the entire poll. So if you wanted to follow up with a little bit more of a question on that one, if I haven't answered it already, then let me know. And that's set. I think I've got my questions. So let me try to catch up to where I was. Have my order. I did my managing order. Okay. Let me double check. I finished it off. I believe so. Yes. So I finished it off. We went through the log, and I said that's where you could see some payment gateway. And all this is great as far as being able to manage the order. But one of the key things that I get asked is, how do I find these little orders? that are all over the darn place. So one way is going to an individual or organization's profile, the Orders tab. You have a child form for your invoice orders, your payment orders, and this other one I'm going to sneak in a bit is your recurring gift orders. Yikes, I'm running out of time with my questions. So this is kind of an easy way to go ahead and find them. Another way that I like to find them, I go to the accounting module. You have installment billing as well as installment payments on the left-hand side, and that's how you can go ahead and find those orders. Before I go too far along, and I know we're running out of time, I'm going to keep on going, but if you need to hop off, I understand, and we'll send out, again, the video to follow up. But I've kind of touched a little bit on these recurring gift ideas, and I want to make sure that we cover that as well. So adding a recurring gift, again, we're using this one donation wizard that's in the fundraising module. If you're on the overview page, you click on add a gift, or if you're on a constituent's profile, add a donation. Brings it up, we have our button to select recurring gift here. The process through the wizard is pretty much the same as what we saw with signed and verbal pledges. We add the recurring gift information, and then we add our payment information at the very end. One of the key differences, though, is that while we do specify a frequency, so we would say monthly, we don't have a cap, we don't have a number of installments that we're going to use. It goes on indefinitely. Yes. When we save this, it's actually creating an order. So that's where my sneaky way of seeing these orders everywhere kind of comes in. So how do we find an order for these recurring gift items? Well, we go to, this is our constituents profile, and that's kind of an easier way for me to kind of see these because we can see recurring gifts are listed there. I did want to bring out this form as well because if you had been using signed pledges or verbal pledges, you'll see those child forms as well at the very bottom. And that's how another way that you can get to their orders as well. I'm going to preface this with saying that one way to get to the order is via the recurring gift, and you'll see why in a second. If I clicked on my recurring gift in that child form, it takes me to my fundraising pledge profile. So that's a little bit of an interim step before I actually get to my order. And one of the reasons is that when you're talking about fundraising, we have a little bit of additional functionality that's available for these orders. So with a pledge, as well as with these recurring gifts, they have this separate page, and they have the ability to do an upgrade or a downgrade on our pledge. A pledge is also a recurring gift. So with our upgrade and downgrade, in the case of my recurring gift, on the form here, you see my amount is $500. If I suddenly decided I wanted to start paying $600, staff could come in and click on this upgrade pledge button, enter an amount of $600, and then next month, I'm going to start getting charged $600 instead of $500. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility in that regard. You'll notice down in the profile tabs, you have pledge and constituent gift that's showing this is the last gift that I made. And then I also have that order child form. So each time you run the recurring gift process, you charge my credit card for $500 or $600, depending on when. That counter for the number of installments is going to go up. If you click the go to arrow for that order, that takes you to that order profile that we saw before. So you have the ability to go ahead and void the schedule. If somebody says, I'm done with doing the recurring gifts, please stop it. You would go to the order, go ahead and void it out. So that's our process as far as kind of wrapping that up and finishing it. Just the gifts and pledges are a little bit special in that they have this upgrade downgrade kind of feature. So I wanted to call that out in case you wanted to use that for something else. Making sure I have my notes, no more questions. So we've gone through some setups, but I think it's really important to make sure we have some considerations in managing these. And it's an unfortunate thing, but I have had some that forgot the step of getting the money. So there is a big setup part that we have ahead of time. We have to set it up. We have to sell the gifts that we want to receive or sell the installment payments, orders, etc. but you still need to make sure that as staff, you have a process in place that every month you are going in and you are running tasks to go ahead and charge the credit cards, charge the ACH to get the money. So I left off the steps: admin module, task scheduler, and then the dashboard. This is what it looks like. I highlighted those that we've talked about thus far. So we have the order installment generation. If you are using installment payments, you have a separate link to go ahead and schedule that process. And then under fundraising, it has a separate one for recurring gift task. All these are very, very narrow focused on installment orders. Again, it would just go out and say, go find all of the orders. You're going to give it a date range to find installment schedules available. You go ahead and hit go, and as soon as you do, netFORUM will schedule the task, and when it runs, it's going to try and create an invoice for anybody who is scheduled to receive an invoice in the date frame that you have. With payment creation, the invoice already exists. So in those cases, it's going to just go out and charge the card for the amount specified in the schedule. Similarly, with recurring gifts, it's going out, finding anybody who has a gift scheduled for that time frame, and it's going to go ahead and try and charge the card for the recurring gift. In the case of gifts, it's creating an invoice and a payment at the same time and updating your gift record. A few things to keep in mind when it comes to anything where we're scheduling payments to folks. Communication. Give them pre-billing notices and notices of if there's an issue with a credit card. Make sure that you're communicating about that. You'll see kind of similar topics if you attended the auto pay renewal. It's the same idea. Especially when you're initially rolling out a new process or somebody is new to the process, you want to make sure that you have very solid communication up front. This is when we're billing. Don't, just be expecting it. This is the charge that's going to happen. The schedule that you have for installments is a queryable item, so you can go to individual and run a query off of that. I will, of course, caveat it and say from individual, it does require a subquery. Of course, if you need help, please reach out to us. We're happy to help guide that. And then the other thing to keep in mind is what to do if you have a failed credit card. Our goal is to try to keep this as automated as possible. And we have some system options that we'll talk about as far as how to manage the failed credit card. Also, keeping in mind some of your payment processor options that you might have depending on your processor. As far as your billing schedule, making sure that you're communicating to people and have a plan of when are you charging them. Is it going to be on the first of the month, the last day of the month, last Friday of the month? Trying to come up with that schedule and making sure that you're communicating with that. If you're accepting any of these or setting up any of these schedules, or you're having recurring gifts online, again, they might say today's date. Just put in some verbiage that says we run billing on the 5th of the month or something like that, so that it's very clear and upfront at the time of sale, but also is included in your communication. When are you going to do a second attempt in the case of a failed credit card, or the third attempt? So keeping those in mind and having your plan. I'd also say kind of following anything that you have automated, making sure that you're considering common billing and payroll schedules. Everybody likes to bill on the 1st of the month. That can mean that somebody's credit card gets overwhelmed, or the bank account that's associated with it. So keeping those things in mind. Some people like to bill a little bit closer to like a mid-month, when some people have a second payroll hit. The last one is, again, if you have a payment processor that does any kind of credit card updater, reach out to them and make sure that you have that as part of your contract. That's another newer thing that's coming out. What that can do is if somebody gets a new credit card because of an expiration date, that's something that can get updated, so it wouldn't be a failure for your transaction. It gets updated so it goes through correctly for you. People are getting issued new cards all the time for the chips and the changes and all that. And so it can update that information as well. Note that in netFORUM, generally speaking, it's not updating the masking that for *******11111 thing. It wouldn't be updating that, so you wouldn't really see it. Again, netFORUM, if you're using a vaulted solution, just has the vault. The actual updated credit card is hanging out in your processor instead, your payment processor company. So credit card updater would be another option to kind of help with those. And I've heard that they're expanding off of options as best that they can as well. Returning to our communications, again, I just want to make sure that this is kind of where the success and failure gets started. Making sure that you're explaining the program. These are recurring gifts. These are installments going through on the schedule. Explaining the program very clearly to customers, telling the customers when they're going to be billed, posting the schedule online. That also helps. And again, making sure that you're telling people I'm about to bill your card in advance. And then internally having the plan where you are looking for any of your scheduled installments that failed. So an installment was due to be processed, but it didn't get processed. That usually means that you'll have a failed credit card. You want to make sure that you're reaching out to those customers. Hey, we noticed it didn't work. Can you give us an updated credit card, or send in the amount, or call them, that sort of thing. So having that plan in place. I mentioned system options. So there are some system options that you do have. They involve the word failure in them, failed or failure. So that's kind of the keyword to go and look off of. I will make the caveat on the very first one. It says recognized revenue. If you sell products that are shippable and you defer invoicing until it ships, the system option impacts that as well. So just be mindful and careful of that. But the first one is recognized revenue during fulfillment, ignore credit cards. What that means is that when netFORUM, in the case of installment orders, where we're creating the invoice each time but have a payment information in the system, or say in recurring gifts, what it means if we say ignore failed credit cards and we want that set to no, is that netFORUM's not going to create an invoice for them. It's going to say, wait, your credit card is not working for me, so I'm just going to abort on this particular order and say, we need to regroup and figure out a better payment method for this. So I like to set that option because it's a worst case scenario for me to have an invoice, because then somebody has to call in, give me their payment information, and then I have to go set up that payment, that new payment information on the order. I'd rather they just not have an invoice. They call and they provide an updated credit card to me, and then I can rerun the process that's creating the invoice and applying the payment, and then I'm done. So that's kind of my preferred methodology. So I would personally like to see recognize revenue during fulfillment, ignore failed credit cards, don't ignore them. The next option that you have is your auto pay retry after failure max attempts. I believe from some of the processors we were hearing kind of the max attempt was hanging out in that 3 or 5 range, but this is a system-wide setting. And so what it's looking at is that particular credit card. If I have it set up on auto pay or installments, I run the process and it fails. How many times do I get to go ahead and try that before overall, even if it's caught up in another process, the process is going to ignore that particular credit card because it already knows it has issues. So that's another option that you have. The last system option that we have to look at would be our auto pay retry after failure days to wait. So kind of like above, you have your max attempts. This one is how long do you wait after a failed credit card before you get to try it again. So that's another one. Again, in the system, it already has its default value. It is system-wide, and we just want to be cognizant of any kind of billing schedules that you have that may be impacted by that system option. So I had this little mini recap, and I was really trying to come up with pros and cons of the different options. And a lot of them kind of ended up in the middle because it really comes down to your business need on whether or not something is pro and con. So a little bit of this is my personal view on things, of course. So in the pros, installment orders, recognizing revenue to cash receipt. So it's a little bit more cash accounting that way. I send out a notice, I get money, that's when I invoice things. My con is if you do deferrals, then it's not going to observe that. It follows its own schedule. Across the board, they all have their personalized schedule for billing, if you will. So you're setting up when you want to bill them. Recurring gifts is just setting up the beginning and you follow it. And I think where I started to go into the middle is really carrying the open AR. with some of our sales like pledges, you want to be seeing that pledge receivable. I pledged $1,000. We need to be able to report that we have an open pledge of $1,000 at the very beginning. So that's very important. For other organizations, they don't like to carry that open AR. So that's where your kind of pros and cons equal out. You will see a little italicized one under installment payments as well. And so I did want to call out a couple of things that I have found along the way or have known about. And one of them is on installment payments. If you have a renewable item and then you go to renew it like membership, if you're set up for installment payments, the schedule still does not carry through to next year. If you'd like to join my issue number, please shoot me an email after this and I'll give you the issue number if you're planning on using it. That way when, hopefully if it gets into a build soon, you'll get the notification from Community Brands that it's been addressed. So that's one caveat that I did want to call out on that one. And the other little issue that I just wanted to bring your attention to if you're going to try and use it was the allow installments. I mentioned that you had to set a checkbox on the membership package. Currently, that checkbox is only available on the add package form. So if you set it from the back end, you're fine. But that's another separate issue that I'm trying to work through because I think it would be nice to be able to set it on an edit form as well. So again, shoot me an email if you have any questions on that. After this, you will get an email from, I believe, from me or from Gravitate, but certainly feel free to reach out. This is my contact information. So thank you very much for coming. And also, we wanted to let you know about another upcoming webinar that we have. And that would be about our audience, netFORUM's audience feature. That's coming up in about a month, and you can go ahead and go online and register. And of course, we'll include a link to it on our email to you. That's it. Thank you very much.